First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto the Most High God Yahweh. We do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world calls Christ. It's your brother Yaiquab, HOIGA, coming back at you with another quick chop, another quick breakdown on Galatians, the 5th chapter, mainly verses 1 and verses 4. All right. And I'm going over this because of, we got a lot of Christians, a lot of Christian Israelites now. I was running around talking about the laws are done away with. We ain't got to keep the laws no more. And primarily for the new brethren that's coming into the camp or, coming into this truth, wrestling with Paul. That's why Peter says that Paul's writings can sometimes be hard to understand. You see what I'm saying? They wrestle with them. They might be reading one thing when it's actually saying something else. You see what I'm saying? So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. Galatians, the 5th chapter, starting at verse 1. All right, and it says, "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." So what we got to understand is first is that chapters and verses was added into the scriptures, for a convenience. You see what I'm saying? So that when we need to find something, we quickly reference something, we can go right to it. Whereas, we don't have to read this long book just to get to the point of what we're trying to get to. You see what I'm saying? So in order to understand what we're actually reading here in verse 1, what that yoke of bondage is, we got to go to the previous chapter because this is a continuation of what was going on in the previous chapter, right? So we're going to go to Galatians 4, and we're going to read we're going to start at verse 22, all right? So this is Galatians 4 and 22. And it says, "For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by the bondmaid and the other by a free woman." Verse 23. "But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise." All right. 24. "Which things are an allegory?" So it's telling you that the bondwoman and the free woman is an allegory for something, right? "For these are the two covenants." So this is what they're an allegory or being in comparison to. You see what I'm saying? The two covenants, the old covenant and the new covenant, all right? "The one from Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Hagar." Verse 25. "For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children." Verse 26. "But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all." So what it's saying here is that it's using a comparison or an allegory to explain the old and new covenant, right? So what's happening is Christ died for us to be able to enter into the new covenant. You see what I'm saying? That's what his death was for, which freeing us from the yoke of bondage from the old covenant. Why were we in bondage to the old covenant? Because we had a debt to pay for breaking that old covenant. You see what I'm saying? We committed idolatry. That's death. We committed adultery. That's death. Witchcraft. That's death. All of these things we had to pay for in accordance to the old covenant. You see what I'm saying? So with Christ's death, it freed us so that we can enter into the new covenant. You see what I'm saying? Let's prove that real quick. Matthew, we're going to go to Matthew, the 26th chapter. Matthew 26, and we're going to start at verse 27. And this is just to show that Christ freed us to go into the new covenant. No, we're not in the new covenant yet. All right? And it reads, Matthew 26 and 27. "And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, Drink ye all of it." Verse 28. "For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." So what this is saying is, what's going on here is Christ is freeing us from that old covenant, which we were in bondage to. You see what I'm saying? We had a debt that we had to pay for breaking that covenant. Christ just broke it, paid that debt right here with his death. You see what I'm saying? So he's saying here, drink this. Now you're free from that old covenant, from free from the penalties of that old covenant. So now you can enter into the new covenant. You see what I'm saying? That's what's happening right here. To prove that we are not yet in the new covenant, we're going to go to Hebrews, the 8th chapter, and we're going to read verse 13, just to show that we're not yet in the new covenant, all right? And that he saith a new covenant, and this is verse 13, Hebrews 8 and 13. In that he saith a new covenant, he hath made the first old. So that first covenant, which is that old covenant, yes, it is old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. So it's ready to vanish away. It hasn't quite vanished away yet. So in certain aspects, we're still under the new covenant, or Salaki, we're still under the old covenant, but primarily under grace. You see what I'm saying? This is what Paul is talking about, all right? Or the author of Hebrews is talking about, Salakia. And let's prove that we're under grace right now. We're going to go to Romans, and we're going to go to the 6th chapter. And we're going to start at verse 1. So this is Romans 6, just showing that we're under grace right now. You see what I'm saying? Christ freed us from the bondage of that old covenant. We're under grace so that we can get it right, get our things together, get in order to enter into the new covenant, all right? Romans 6 and 1. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Verse 2. God forbid, which means no. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? So we're already dead to the sin that we committed under the old covenant. We're already dead from that. You see what I'm saying? So we can't continue to live under the new covenant because we were already put to death for that via Christ. You see what I'm saying? So right now we're under grace. You see what I'm saying? That's what he's saying. Let's jump down to verse 14. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for ye are not under the law, but under grace. So he's saying we're under grace right now. You see what I'm saying? We're not under the debt of the law. We're under grace right now. Verse 15. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under the law, but under grace? God forbid, which means no. No, you cannot sin. Sin is the transgression of the law, according to 1 John. You see what I'm saying? So no, you cannot continue to sin that you're under grace. Grace is not for you to continue to sin. It's for you to get your things right, get it in order. You see what I'm saying? Start practicing this law so that when that time comes, you'll be ready for it. Because once we get under the bond of the new covenant, there is no more grace. You see what I'm saying? There is no more, uh-oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that, or my bad, I'll get it right next time. Either you're going to get it or you ain't. You see what I'm saying? And to prove we're not under the new covenant yet, we're going to go to Ezekiel, the 20th chapter. And we're going to start at verse 35. And this is going to show when we come under that new covenant. You see what I'm saying? Ezekiel 20, verse 35, and it reads, and I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there will I plead with you face to face. So we're going to go back into the wilderness. Verse 36, like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so will I plead with you, saith the Lord. So this is eschatology, right? So this is for when we go back into the wilderness, the same wilderness our forefathers was in. We're going right back into that. Verse 37, and I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. So in this wilderness, just like our fathers went into covenant with the Most High, we're going to be into going to the bond of the covenant in that same wilderness. All right. So we're not in the new covenant yet. We are currently under grace with the old covenant waxing old. All right. So let's see. Let's go back to well, real quick, just to show that, you know what I mean, the Israelites were the only people under that first covenant. I'm going to read Psalms 50 and verse 5, just to show that the people that were under the old covenant is going to be the same people that's going to be under that new covenant, just in case, you know what I mean, we got Christians watching and be like, it's for everybody. No, it's not for everybody. It's only for the Israelites, all right? Psalms 50 and 5. And it reads, gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. So the only people that ever made a covenant with the Most High by sacrifice are the Israelites. All right. Let's see. Let's go back to Galatians, and we're going to end this off with, I'm going to read Galatians 5, 1 through 4. So from the top, Galatians 5. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free. So he freed us from from the penalties of that old covenant. And be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Don't sin again and be entangled with that yoke of bondage, which is that old covenant, which is the law of Moses, which a debt has to be paid if you go off. That's all it's saying. Behold, I, Paul, say unto you. Now, he's saying, I, Paul, so this is not saying, thus saith the Lord, or as it is written. So he's speaking freely right now. You see what I'm saying? That if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. Verse 3. For I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the whole law. Verse 4. Christ is become of no effect unto you, whosoever of you are justified by the law. Ye are fallen from grace. So what that means is, if we're seeking justification under the law, then there is no grace. There is no, my bad, I didn't know I couldn't do that. You should be, if you go off under, because you think you're justified by that law, you will be punished according to that law. So if you commit idolatry, if you go into the Christian church and all that, worshiping white Jesus, you should be put to death, because that's idolatry. If you out here talking about, I'm gonna steal your girl, or, you know what I mean, sleeping with other men's wives, that's adultery. You should be put to death. Why? Because you are justified by that law. And you have no grace. You have no, my bad, no, oops, I made a mistake, I won't do it again. All right? So hopefully that was edifying to you. That's all Galatians 5, 1 through 4 is saying. You see what I'm saying? It's not saying that the law is done away with and we ain't got to keep the law no more. It's just saying we're under grace. That's all it's saying. So with that, I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory unto the Most High God, Yahweh. I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shah, who the world calls Christ. Hope this was edifying, and shalom.